I'm Ryan Frankel, owner of Thrift Vintage Fashion, where we offer over 40 different vintage clothing categories, from t-shirts, sweatshirts, jackets, denim, where you can shop by size in bundles of 3 or 6 pieces per category. We try to emulate a vintage thrifting experience online with a curated selection of top-tier vintage bundles. With our no handpicking policy, it allows for you, the consumer shopping online, to be the first hands in our warehouse. With our experienced team and strong supplier relationships, we are able to provide categories filled with the most relevant trends in vintage fashion. We have 3 generations of experience in the vintage clothing business, starting with my grandfather Jerry and then my father Erwin.
I decided to buy used clothing. I went from house to house looking for used clothing. I bought them from the people in the homes, and from that we used to separate it in the basement and sell it as we get order. And then I started selling it wholesale to dealers on the east side. I went to army bases to pick out the used clothing, the stuff that was sold to the public. But you had to be a veteran in order to purchase clothing from the government. While the kids were small, I took them with me at times. When I went to see customers, I picked up the used clothing, put it in the back of the car and the trunk in the back, and that's how I started my business. And it grew to the point where, as my son got older, he got involved, and I wanted him to know the business, and that's how I started.
So I started in the industry, my mid-20s, from earlier days hanging around with my father, who would go to these different rag houses and pick up clothing and resell it. And I kind of took a liking to it out of college, came down to Florida, set up shop down here, and started bringing in containers from families that I knew from overseas, Central and South America, where the goods weren't picked through. And that's a primary source of merchandise that we bring in now, and knowing that it's not picked through is the key to the industry. Bringing in containers of goods, sorting and separating them, the warehouses we're in now by categories, which started probably about 7-8 years ago when I brought Ryan into the business with me, where he really moved it globally with the internet and social media. Before that, it was primarily a couple wholesalers that I dealt with, a couple customers overseas and domestic, where you were able to sell, more mass, more wholesale goods. Starting another section of the industry where we used to do by bulk, maybe 50 pounds, 100 pounds, we had minimums. Now we're doing it where the customer now, if it's a vintage person who's interested in 2 pieces, 3 pieces, now they can come to us and buy that as well.
So one of the first questions we get asked is, where does all the clothing come from? It all comes from American donation charities such as Goodwill, Salvation Army, where they put a little bit of it in their own thrift stores, but most of the clothing gets sent to rag houses. We have established relationships with those rag houses where we're able to go in and select vintage styles based on the trend or season. Then we ship it back to our warehouse in Miami, where we regrade it for grade A only, and then sell it to our markets all around the world. So unlike most vintage clothing dealers, where we really stand out is we don't allow any hand picking in our warehouse. The difference between us and a warehouse that allows hand picking is typically any stores or individuals who come by to pick vintage in there, they're going for the best stuff. And if we just allowed anybody in here to pick the best stuff, when we're shipping our clients all over the world, they're missing the best stuff. They're going to get mostly mediocre product. So in order to have a consistent quality grade, we have a strict policy of zero handpicking. That's always how it's been, and it's always how it will be. We'd like to compare ourselves to a thrift store with constantly fresh merchandise that's never been picked through. We have a highly experienced, tight-knit team who have picked and packed vintage for thousands of orders and hundreds of customers over the last decade. At Thrift Vintage Fashion, we recognize the importance of being eco-friendly and giving back to the community. So with every order, you yourself are playing a role in sustainable fashion, and with that order, we donate 1 pound of clothing to a local homeless shelter.